Welcome to Life Rebounding. Thanks for dropping by today. We want to continue to look at the priceless Lamb of God as found in Isaiah 53, and we're looking in particular today at Isaiah 53 verse 4 and the first part of verse 4, which says, "Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows." Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. The story is told of Sadhu Sundar Singh, who was traveling with a companion through a pass in the Himalayan mountains. As they were traveling through, they came across the body of a man that was lying buried in the snow. And as they paused, they realized that the man was alive, and Sadhu Sundar Singh wanted to stop and help the man and try and revive him. But his traveling companion basically said, if we try and stop and help him, it's going to cost us our own lives. And he refused to stop and help and plunged along himself. And Sadhu Sundar Singh instead picked up the man and he carried him over the trail. As they were walking along the trail, heading towards their destination, the body warmth of Sadhu Sundar Singh eventually warmed up the man he was carrying, and eventually warmed him up enough that he revived and he was able to walk himself. As the two of them walked along the trail through the mountains, they came across the first traveling companion, who now lay dead in the snow. And they realized that it was in the traveling together that they had saved each other. In many respects, Sadhu Sundar Singh had been prepared to give up his life for the sake of saving another, while the other had tried to save his life and had in the end lost it. Well, the onlookers at the suffering servant that Isaiah sees in Isaiah 53 seem to be having a change of heart as they look at the suffering servant, the priceless Lamb of God. They seem to be now acknowledging the significance of what's happening with the suffering servant. That what's going on is not just about somebody getting punishment for sins they deserved or crimes that they deserved to have punished, but there was something substitutionary about what was happening, that the suffering servant was doing something that was for them. And so they begin to see this suffering servant, the priceless lamb, as being not only making a sacrifice that's penal, but it's also substitutionary for them. The word surely seems to be a transition point. It seems to be an acknowledgement that they are now going from those who hid their faces from Jesus to ones who are now beginning to recognize the significance. It's an acknowledgement that the punishment the suffering servant was receiving was partly, at least, the punishment they deserved. And when we read that he took up our sorrows, took up our infirmities, what we see is somebody who's intentionally taking up those infirmities and sorrows. He intentionally, purposefully, and lovingly takes them up. We find ourselves caught in a mountain of sin, mountain of our own sins, wandering through a pass where there is no escape. But Christ comes along and he offers his life so that we might live. And he bears us up on the cross, and then he provides the means of escape for us so that we can live. That's the beauty of what Jesus Christ has done for you and for me. When we read about him as the involved lamb, he very much is. He's involved in our salvation. He's involved in our sustenance day by day. He's the one who strengthens us by his Spirit. He is very involved in our lives. Can I encourage you today to just look to him as that one who's involved in your life? Maybe even look over the last 24 hours and see where he's been present, and maybe you haven't acknowledged it or noticed it, but now looking back you can see that he was there. Would you take a moment today and do that? And can we together worship that one who is the involved Lamb in our lives? May God bless you today.